You probably know a man like this. He's not hiding in his childhood bedroom. He's not scared of commitment in the cheap meme version of that phrase. He has a career that's moving, a circle of friends, a routine, a decent grip on his health, and a calm confidence that comes from paying his bills and handling his problems. When he walks into a room, nobody pities him, and yet he consistently chooses to stay single. Not because he can't attract a partner, not because he's incapable of love. He stays single because for a growing number of men, being single isn't a temporary situation you endure until life starts. It is the plan. A 2023 Pew Research study pointed out something that caught a lot of people off guard. 63% of men aged 18 to 29 reported being single, nearly double the rate of women in the same age bracket. Read that again. This isn't a small shift. It's a structural change in how young adults are organizing their lives. And it's not simply men failing to launch, it's men quietly redefining what success looks like when nobody is watching. In this video, we're going to break down 10 psychological reasons some men are genuinely happier on their own. Not the surface level reasons like he's busy or he likes freedom. I'm talking about the deeper drivers: personality wiring, emotional economics, attachment patterns, risk assessment, and values. Because we still carry this outdated stereotype of the single man. He's either the eternal bachelor who refuses to grow up or the lonely guy who got left behind. Both images are lazy. Both miss what's happening in real life. For an increasing number of men, singlehood is a conscious, calculated choice. Sometimes it's a strategic move away from a game they've decided isn't worth the price of admission. Sometimes it's self-preservation. Sometimes it's ambition. Sometimes it's peace. And before anyone tries to turn this into an argument, this is not an anti-relationship video. It's not women are the problem. It's not a sales pitch for bitterness. Relationships can be incredible. Love can be life-changing, but you don't understand modern dating until you understand why a sane, functional man might look at the whole thing and say, not for me, not right now, maybe not ever. So let's drop the cliches and get honest about the psychology. These are 10 reasons men choose singlehood, not as a consolation prize, but as a preferred lifestyle. Reason number 1: avoidant attachment and the fear of emotional enmeshment. For some men, the very thing a relationship is supposed to provide, closeness, registers internally as danger. That doesn't mean he doesn't want connection. He does. Most avoidant men still want love, companionship, loyalty, and warmth. But when closeness gets intense, their nervous system interprets it as a loss of freedom, a loss of self, or a loss of control. It can feel like being swallowed. This often develops early. If you grew up with caregivers who were emotionally distant, inconsistent, critical, or uncomfortable with your needs, you learn a quiet lesson. Needing people is risky. Depending on others leads to disappointment. Safety comes from self-sufficiency, so you become good at handling your own emotions privately. You learn to not need much. You become competent, independent, strong, and that looks admirable from the outside. But in adult relationships, modern expectations can collide hard with this wiring. A relationship today often comes with constant access and constant visibility. Texting throughout the day, sharing feelings in real time, debriefing every micro conflict, validating emotions on demand, being emotionally present even when your brain wants to retreat into silence. An avoidant man experiences that not as romance, but as pressure, like surveillance, like a tax on his inner world. And here's the brutal part: the more he actually likes her, the more intense that alarm can get, because the stakes feel higher. If he lets her in and it goes wrong, it won't just hurt, it will disrupt his entire system. So the pattern becomes predictable. He pursues, it feels exciting, it feels safe at a distance, and then the moment it becomes real, labels, expectations, deeper intimacy, he starts pulling away. Not always consciously. Sometimes he picks fights. Sometimes he becomes emotionally flat. Sometimes he disappears into work. Sometimes he convinces himself she's not right for him. From the outside, it looks like self sabotage. From the inside, it feels like survival. For this man, singlehood isn't loneliness, it's relief. It's liberation from the pressure of emotional merging and the guilt of not meeting a partner's needs the way she needs them. His peace isn't found in constant closeness, it's found in space, simplicity, and being the undisputed owner of his time and inner life. If this hits home, the point isn't avoid relationships forever. The point is to recognize the pattern and understand that you may need to learn secure attachment skills deliberately because you probably didn't learn them by default. Reason number two: emotional labor burnout. There's a popular story that men avoid relationships because they can't communicate or don't understand emotions. Sometimes that's true, often it's not. For many men, the real issue is not emotional incapacity, it's emotional exhaustion. Specifically, from the unspoken job description they feel assigned in relationships: unpaid, 24/7 emotional support. A lot of men feel like the role is this: be stable, be calm, be strong, be available, be understanding, be emotionally articulate, be romantic, be responsible, be ambitious, be a leader, be a teammate, be sensitive, but also never be weak in a way that reduces attraction. And you're not just managing your own emotions, you're expected to hold space for hers, translate conflict into comfort, absorb stress without reacting, and still perform competence. The problem is, many men were raised with the opposite training. They were taught toughness, self control, and handle it. Vulnerability was discouraged or mocked. Emotional nuance wasn't taught, it was punished. So when adult relationships demand emotional fluency, it can feel like being forced to take a final exam for a class you were never allowed to attend. He tries, he listens, he shows up, but it never feels like enough. He misses a cue. He says the wrong thing. He offers solutions when she wants empathy. He offers empathy when she wants action. He becomes hypervigilant. Over time, that becomes burnout. Not all relationships are like this, but if a man repeatedly experiences relationships as emotional performance with constant grading, he eventually makes a rational choice: conserve energy. Singlehood becomes emotional self defense. In solitude, he can regulate himself without being responsible for another adult's emotional equilibrium. He can be quiet without it being interpreted as rejection. He can have a hard day without needing to narrate it perfectly. It's not a rejection of women, it's a rejection of being cast as a full time emotional caretaker without reciprocal structure. If you're in this category, the skill isn't be colder. The skill is boundaries, learning to support without being consumed, and choosing partners who can regulate themselves rather than outsource their stability. Reason number three: genuine preference for solitude. In a world that treats constant socializing as proof of mental health, solitude gets mislabeled as sadness. But for many men, being alone isn't emptiness, it's a sanctuary. These men aren't necessarily awkward or antisocial. Many have friends, a social life, even good dating options. But their baseline happiness is internal. They recharge alone. Think of it like a battery system. Some people gain energy from conversation and constant connection. Others spend energy during social contact and recharge in silence. This isn't dysfunction, it's temperament. For a man who thrives in solitude, the structure of a relationship, shared schedules, shared space, constant negotiation can feel like living with his battery stuck at 20%. Even if he cares deeply about his partner, he constantly craves the quiet that a relationship naturally reduces. And here's the trap: he feels guilty for needing so much alone time. She feels neglected. He tries to compromise. She tries to accommodate. Both lose. So he chooses the honest path. He builds a life that fits his nervous system instead of forcing his nervous system to fit a life. Singlehood lets him be social on his terms, then retreat without hurting anyone. For him, a quiet home isn't lonely, it's peace with walls. Reason number 4: low agreeableness and the cost of constant compromise. This one gets misunderstood. Low agreeableness doesn't automatically mean a man is cruel. It often means he's direct, skeptical, competitive, and more oriented toward logic than emotional smoothing. He values truth over harmony. He can handle conflict without needing it to be softened. In certain environments, business, competitive sports, leadership negotiation, these traits can be advantages. But modern relationships often reward the opposite: gentleness, validation, tact, constant emotional calibration, and a high tolerance for compromise. A man low in agreeableness can find this exhausting and worse, inauthentic. He doesn't want to play the say it the right way game. He wants clarity. He wants efficiency. He wants to speak directly without being treated like a villain. So the relationship becomes a repeating cycle. He states something plainly. She experiences it as harsh. He feels misunderstood. She feels unsafe. He feels like he's walking on eggshells. She feels like she's doing emotional labor. Resentment grows. Eventually, he concludes, I'm not built for this environment. I can either constantly edit myself, or I can stop signing up for a dynamic where my natural communication style is treated as a moral failure. Singlehood becomes identity preservation. He can be himself without negotiating his personality into something softer, just to keep peace. The growth edge here isn't be alone forever. It's learning the difference between being direct and being careless. Honesty without respect is just aggression in a clean suit. But respect without honesty becomes a manipulation. A man who masters both becomes rare. Reason number 5: low conscientiousness and the friction of shared life. Low conscientiousness doesn't mean lazy. It often means spontaneous, flexible, and less interested in rigid systems. He may live in what others call organized chaos. He gets things done, but he doesn't worship schedules, spotless counters, or long-range planning. Now imagine pairing that with a partner who's highly conscientious, structured, orderly, future-oriented. You get constant friction. Suddenly, everything becomes a debate. How clean should the house be? How far in advance should we plan weekends? How should money be tracked? What's the right way to do chores? Why can't you just be more consistent? For him, it feels like being managed, like his natural operating system is defective. For her, it feels like she's carrying the structure of the relationship alone. Nobody is evil here. It's a mismatch. But day-to-day mismatch is the kind that drains love quietly. It turns romance into logistics. It turns home into a performance review. So he chooses what feels rational, reclaim his environment. Singlehood lets him live by his own systems without being corrected. He can be spontaneous without being punished for it. This isn't avoiding responsibility, it's avoiding constant conflict over rules he doesn't value. Reason number 6, unrealistic expectations and the collapse of the fantasy. A lot of men, quietly, grew up on two conflicting stories. Story 1, romance as destiny. If you find the right person, things will feel smooth. Conflict will be minimal. Compatibility will carry you. The relationship will make sense. Story 2, modern relationships as constant emotional work. Talk more, share more, heal more, process more, negotiate everything, improve endlessly. So he enters dating with an invisible contradiction. He wants the relationship to feel effortless and also expects it to be a never ending self improvement project. When reality arrives, arguments, misunderstandings, differences in values, differences in libido, differences in timelines, he feels disillusioned. At the same time, the marketplace dynamics of dating can amplify perfectionism. Apps create the illusion of endless options that fuels checklist culture. If you don't like one thing, swap them out. If there's conflict, it must mean it's wrong. If chemistry fades, it must mean you're settling. So a man feels squeezed between his own idealism and everyone else's expectations. Be strong, but emotionally open. Be successful, but always available. Be confident, but never intimidating. Be masculine, but never traditional in a way that offends. Be protective, but not controlling. Be ambitious, but not obsessed with work. Be stable, but exciting. He looks at that and thinks, there is no way to win without losing myself. That's burnout. And the rational response to burnout is not try harder, it's stop. Singlehood becomes the rejection of fantasy and the rejection of impossible standards. It becomes a decision to live in reality. Imperfect people, imperfect love, imperfect outcomes. And if reality feels like a constant audition, he opts out. Reason number 7, rejection fatigue and the numbers game. Rejection hurts everyone, but modern dating often assigns men the role of an initiator. Approach first, message first, lead the conversation, set the date, keep it fun, be interesting, be confident, be persistent but not pushy. On dating apps, this becomes extreme. Many men experience it as a high volume grind, sending message after message to receive silence, ghosting, or one word replies. That is not a minor inconvenience, it's repeated micro rejection. Every non response is a small hit. Every scene with no reply becomes a small humiliation. Every match that goes nowhere reinforces the belief I'm not enough, not attractive enough, not tall enough, not rich enough, not exciting enough. And even men with decent results can get tired of the constant performance. Because initiating isn't just about logistics, it's emotional exposure. It's putting your ego on the table repeatedly. Eventually, a sane man does the math. Effort is high. Emotional cost is high. Return is uncertain. And the process itself often feels dehumanizing. So he chooses emotional risk management. Opt out. Singlehood becomes confidence preservation. Not because he's afraid, but because he refuses to keep paying an emotional tax for access to something that may not be worth it. And again, this isn't a universal truth. Some men enjoy the chase. But for many, the constant rejection cycle doesn't build resilience, it builds numbness. Reason number 8, trauma, betrayal, and the logic of never again. Some men stay single because they've seen the worst case scenario up close: a brutal breakup, infidelity, manipulation, a divorce that turned their life into paperwork and court dates, a relationship where they lost friends, money, sanity, and self respect. After that, love stops feeling like an adventure and starts feeling like a liability. The emotional scar tissue changes your risk tolerance. You don't approach a new relationship with optimism. You approach it with the memory of what it can cost. And what makes it worse is that modern culture often invalidates that fear. People say, not everyone is like that. True, but the man isn't claiming everyone is like that. He's saying he has evidence that it can happen, and he doesn't want to gamble again. This is not always bitterness. Often it's learned caution. He might date casually. He might enjoy companionship, but he avoids deep vulnerability because, in his experience, that's where the danger starts. Singlehood becomes a fortress, emotional and financial stability protected by distance. If you're here, the deepest work isn't find someone new. It's making sure you're not letting a past wound dictate your entire future. Sometimes the correct move is solitude for healing. Sometimes the correct move is therapy, accountability, and rebuilding your capacity to trust. But either way, staying single can be a rational phase or a rational lifestyle choice. Reason number 9, mission focus and self actualization. This is one of the most proactive reasons. Some men aren't avoiding relationships. They're pursuing something else with total commitment, building a business, mastering a craft, getting an elite shape, financial independence, education, creating a body of work, caring for family, becoming the man they respect. A serious relationship requires compromise, time, money, emotional bandwidth. Decisions become joint decisions. Weekends aren't automatically yours. Career moves affect two people. Your budget becomes our budget. Your priorities get negotiated. For a man who is laser focused, those compromises can feel like unacceptable trade offs, not because he's selfish, but because he understands opportunity cost. If he believes his window for building something meaningful is right now, he may see relationships not as support, but as friction, an anchor, even if it's a beautiful one. So he chooses singlehood strategically, 100% resource allocation toward the mission. He gets fulfillment from progress, competence, and purpose, not from romantic partnership. And for a certain kind of man, that isn't sad. It's clean, it's clear, it's satisfying. Reason number 10, rejecting the old life script. For generations, the story was simple: get educated, get a job, find a wife, buy a house, have kids, repeat. That script still works for many people. But more men are looking at it and asking a dangerous question: do I actually want that? Or do I just want approval? A relationship often accelerates social pressure. Once you're coupled, the conveyor belt starts. When are you moving in? When are you getting married? When are you having kids? When are you buying a home? When are you becoming serious? For men who don't fit the traditional mold, or who simply don't want that lifestyle, relationships can feel like stepping onto a track toward a destination they never chose. Maybe he's more creative than conventional. Maybe he values freedom over legacy. Maybe he wants community without marriage. Maybe he wants companionship without cohabitation. Maybe he doesn't want children. Maybe he doesn't want to perform provider masculinity as his life's identity. And if he senses that a relationship will require him to play a role that feels fake, he chooses to write his own script. Singlehood becomes self-determination, the ability to define manhood on his own terms, the freedom to build a life around values rather than expectations. Now, let's zoom out. These 10 reasons aren't always separate. They stack. A man can be avoidant, burned out, mission focused, and scarred by a bad breakup all at once. He can prefer solitude and also be tired of rejection. He can want love in theory, but hate the modern dating process in practice. And this is the key point. For many men, being single is not passive. It's not a failure state. It's an active strategy. It's a move toward peace. But here's what I want to add, because this is where the conversation usually gets shallow. Singlehood solves certain problems, but it also reveals certain truths. When you're single, you learn what kind of life you actually enjoy. You learn how you handle stress without outsourcing comfort. You learn whether your confidence is real or borrowed from attention. You learn whether you can create meaning without applause. For some men, singlehood becomes the best training ground they've ever had. They get disciplined. They get financially stable. They build routines. They deepen friendships. They get stronger. They stop performing. And for others, singlehood becomes a hiding place. They avoid intimacy because it scares them. They avoid accountability because they don't want to change. They avoid vulnerability because they'd rather be in control than be loved. The difference is honesty. So here are a few questions worth asking yourself if any of this hit home. Do I want a relationship, or do I want the status of being chosen? When I imagine commitment, do I feel warmth or do I feel trapped? Am I avoiding relationships because I'm building something or because I'm afraid? Do I have standards or do I have walls? If the right partner showed up, would I recognize it or would I sabotage it? There's no shame in choosing singlehood. There's also no glory in turning it into an identity that hardens you. The goal is clarity, because the man who chooses to stay single isn't a mystery. He's a rational person making calculated decisions in a complicated world. He might be wired to find intimacy overwhelming. He might thrive in solitude. He might be exhausted by unrealistic expectations. He might be protecting himself after a relationship that nearly destroyed him. He might be so focused on his mission that compromise feels like a threat. Or he might simply be refusing an old script that never fit. The common thread is not hatred. It's not immaturity. It's not incapacity. It's a search for peace and authenticity, a move away from conflict, pressure, and constant performance. A move toward a life that feels clean, aligned, and under his control. And here's the final truth most people miss. A man's worth is not defined by his relationship status. It's defined by his character, his competence, his ability to love well when he chooses to, and his ability to build a life that brings genuine fulfillment, even if he builds it alone. If any of these reasons resonated with you, drop your perspective in the comments. Which one hit hardest and why? And if you want more deep dives into modern psychology, masculine identity, and the hidden forces shaping dating and relationships today, like the video and subscribe.